Good afternoon. This is Sunil from Reporting House. I'm today going to talk about how we can generate key performance indicator from the CMMS system. So I'm going to introduce the business challenges and how we can go about determining KPIs and just show some of the examples of KPIs and dashboards that we all can use. I have a short survey question. Bill?
All right, we're going to launch our first poll for today. And here it is. What CMMS software do you currently use? What CMMS software do you currently use? Is it SAP, Maximo, Infor DataStream, Oracle, or is there another one? All right, they're coming in pretty quick on this one, Sunil. We're just going to leave it one more second here, and we're going to close this out. All right, Sunil, it looks like we have 47% is coming in at, actually, excuse me, 40% is coming in at other. We've got a tie at 27%, both saying SAP and Maximo. 7% is saying Oracle, and no one is coming in at Infor or DataStream.
All right. Good to know what people are using. As we all have business challenges for managing all our enterprise assets. We want to know our underperforming asset utilization. We want to know service availability, reliability. And as different roles, there is different need for information and so that people can monitor their activities. Of course, everybody wants to know the total cost of asset ownership over the life cycle of assets, want to get timely information and of critical issues, events, etc. Want to optimize spare parts. We want to identify exceptions which are out of normal and identify areas that can need immediate attention. We all have processes, want to identify bottlenecks in the processes. So different roles have different needs. Here is the dilemma that most of the EM decision makers have. Where do we focus our maintenance efforts? There is a tremendous amount of information, and we have to sift through the clutter, get to the right information, support our analysis for strategies and process changes, and institute the KPIs to monitor them. We also want to know the process bottlenecks and monitor collective progress. If we have made any changes strategically or in the processes, we want to see whether that has affected any positive change in the results. The other main challenge we see is communicating goals and objectives with everyone involved in the organization. Many a times, clarity in the goals is one of the single most hindrance for getting everybody motivated and doing their work according to the goals. We want all the stakeholders to prioritize their work, align their actions, focusing on the corporate and departmental goals. So in such situations when there are multiple goals, multiple things happening in the organization, it is very important to align everyone towards the goals. And then, of course, we want to monitor all performance and make timely adjustments, take some remedial actions if required, make decisions on a timely basis. We want to benchmark performance, highlighting best practices so the others in the organization can use it. And in general, we want to have better results from all our reliability initiatives, whether it's PDM, CBM, RCM, or any other methodology that we may have. So this is what most of us are facing as a challenge. And why are we not using as much of KPIs? We have seen that lack of leadership, lack of knowledge on how data can be leveraged to build the KPIs. In some organization, data quality may be poor, related to accuracy, consistency, completeness, or integrity of the data itself. So they cannot rely on the KPIs generated using this CMMS systems. The other challenge we have seen is there is no standardization on KPI definition. So that becomes a hindrance, especially in the multi-location type of multi-plant, multi-site organizations. Standardization is lacking. And also there are some other areas that everybody is involved with. There are other methodologies we are following. IT has other priorities, so the tools are not in place, so the IT infrastructure is not in place to utilize the CMMS data. And of course, we all have budget constraints. The single most thing that we also noticed is the lack of culture for using KPIs. And once that culture is built, then a lot of things will become easier. So this is what we saw, why we rely less on KPIs. Bill, I have one more question.
All right, let's launch our second poll question. Rate quality and integrity of your CMMS data in terms of accuracy, consistency, and completeness. Very good, good, poor, or very poor. All right, a couple more seconds here, and we're going to close it out. One more second, and here comes our results. All right, Sunil, it looks like we've got 61% is coming in saying good. 33% are saying poor. Very poor is coming in at 6%, and nobody said very good.
Okay, but I'm happy that at least we all believe we have good data, and this is some of the KPIs we have seen people use will actually help improve the data quality itself. There are many challenges related to data quality, and the lack of data quality is really contributing to, in many cases, why people rely less on KPIs. Companies who have started using KPIs since most of the decisions are made based on that, they have taken extra efforts in improving data quality. So it's a good sign that we have good, majority of you have good data, so at least that part will be a good starting point. All right, most of the CMMS has, what we have seen is the gaps in the way information is provided to the end users or decision makers. Most of the time we get operational reports, more detail-oriented reports, etc. But seldom we get metrics or scorecards or a dashboard. There is no capability doing analytical reporting. So basically data management or data handling is limited, and there is a need for sometimes to combine data from CMMS and some other non-CMMS related asset data. For example, we can combine time and attendance data from another system to with CMMS. So we have seen this as a challenge with many CMMS users, that there are limited availability of reports or KPIs within the system that they get. And most of the vendors rely on end users to build their own KPIs, build their own framework around that. So that's what we have seen as a major challenge. I have one more question, Bill.
All right, let's launch our third poll question, and here it comes. What reporting data analysis software do you primarily use for your CMMS? What reporting data analysis software do you primarily use for your CMMS? All right, one more second. We're going to close it out. And Sunil, here comes the results. Looks like we've got an overwhelming 50% saying Crystal, 25% coming in at SAP, 17% VIRT, and 8% saying accurate.
Okay. All right. Some of the tools that in this poll question, I think they are designed to do mostly operational reports like Crystal or Actuate or BERT. And of course, we can develop KPIs in those softwares also. But primarily they are designed, they are really catering to an operational reporting. There are some other tools which help build dashboard, build KPIs, etc., and how to manage the KPIs. So it's good to know that most of you are using Crystal, and SAP, I think, is the other what we got. All right. So general approach we have for asset operations, engineering, maintenance, and reliability. For a long time, we have been using this approach where we have systems, process, and people. And this is a three-legged stool which kind of combine and which is giving us good result. This has been practiced for almost in most companies, and the fact that you all have CMMS, I'm assuming that some portion of this is already in place. Maybe some legs are a little bit weaker than the other depending on the organization, but by and large, most of us use this, and we are getting good results. So how do we go from good to great? How do we go from current state to a future state which is better than what it is today? So what we believe is, let's rearrange the stool a little bit. Let us add another leg in the mix here, which is the data analysis leg. We believe that will reinforce the stool itself. It will reinforce the legs of each of these stools. So systems can be further reinforced, processes can be reinforced, people can be trained, and then we can get world-class results. So just data analysis, understanding data, understanding KPIs and leveraging whatever CMMS data we have can take us from good to great. We have seen that most of the companies who have started using KPIs and other data analysis tools have identified a lot of challenges with their processes, with their systems, and of course help train people. So let's look at some of the things, some of the KPIs that can be used for some of the basic areas. In asset performance, if we want to identify underperforming assets, we can rank worst percentage asset utilization, worst availability. Maybe we can rank worst asset reliability by reliability. Also, we can rank, we have seen some customers do ranking of highest total maintenance cost per equipment. And we can rank it, so we can, actually all this will lead to identifying exceptions, identifying bad actors, and then focus on solving or identifying issues related to why something is failing frequently or it's costing us a lot more in the maintenance cost. So once we identify these assets, then it will be easier to identify the root cause of poor performance, and then arrive at some management decisions that can help solve these problems. Similarly, if we have made any improvements in the processes or we have changed strategies, and then we want to see how it has affected the performance of assets, we can monitor percentage total maintenance cost reduction or change in the maintenance cost. Similarly, MTTR changes. If we have trained our laborers in certain skills, we can monitor whether it has affected the MTTR. Just from monitoring availability and reliability, we can monitor MTBF if there are any strategic changes towards that. If we are going to monitor a special, want to keep old assets and identify old assets and want to keep it on a watch list, we can actually focus on some of the KPIs associated only addressing this particular problem. We can identify what's the total maintenance cost and the average total maintenance cost for a particular class of equipment or within that class of equipment, and then compare it and see whether the old assets are having any extraordinary cost or not. So some of these KPIs can really help us monitor the performance of certain assets. Similarly, in work management, we want to monitor proactive versus reactive maintenance efforts. We can monitor percentage proactive work orders. We can include PM, PDMs, and inspections or any other you consider as a proactive work orders, or any CVM related work orders that get generated. We can monitor here, and with the total work orders. So this will allow us to identify how much work are we doing proactive versus reactive. Understanding volume of the work to be done, cost, time, material. In this case, we can monitor percentage change in work order count for a given period. We can compare it with a similar time frame from the previous year, or we can do it quarter to quarter, month to month, etc. Just from a work order workflow efficiency, if you have instituted a new process or a new methodology, we can monitor percentage change in average time for approval, planning, scheduling. This will allow us to work efficiently. If we have multiple steps that work order goes through, we can identify bottlenecks in various stages of that work order or the life cycle of that work order. Similarly, if we want to identify and monitor problematic work orders, we can create KPIs related to percentage of delayed in-progress work orders. So these are the work orders which started but got delayed, and they are either in the wait stage or whatever the problem might be. So you want to know those things. So it's almost management by exception. So you want to identify these problem work orders which were started, and after it was started, it was canceled. Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah. So similarly, we want to do rework work orders which required rework. So if we want to address planning and scheduling, we can have KPIs related to planning compliance, percentage planned hours versus actual, planned cost versus actual. If in the CMMS, if we are keeping cost, we can monitor such factors. If we have allocated material, actual planned material versus actual, these are the things which will help monitoring planning compliance. Similar to, we can do scheduling compliance. If we have scheduled something, are we able to finish the work within that scheduled time? So work order completion per schedule, end date versus actual. Similarly, planned versus unplanned work. We can identify all the emergency work, emergency work orders, and identify certain factors related to that. From reliability standpoint, there are other areas like understanding availability and criticality of the equipment. We can monitor percentage availability versus operational hours by equipment class or for a critical equipment. And some of these things can be done for only critical equipment. We don't have to do it for every single piece of equipment. Now, calculating operational hours can be a very tedious job, depending on how the company operates, what the timings are, taking into account all holidays, and in some cases, some companies have made that as an additional data that they keep it so that it can be compared with the availability of assets. So the operational hours are on an ongoing basis, is computed and monitored on a per-day basis in many companies. Similarly, we can understand the impact of any strategy changes or any new initiatives on reliability. We can monitor the percentage change in MTBR or MTBF rather, and the change in availability. Also, if we want to monitor risk, failure risk, we can identify what the change in reliability is, as well as change in the downtime. So which in many cases can be attributed or can be calculated as a cost of downtime, can be taken into account to understand the consequence of that risk. So if we are going to calculate some of these factors, then we have to know what the cost of the downtime is. Similarly, we can monitor unplanned downtime, which will help understand how effective our PM and PDM programs are and how compliant are we with these PM and PDM programs. So similarly, I have for failure analysis also, if we want to identify significant failures, we can compare the percentage downtime by those failure codes, understand the MTBF, MTTR, and maintenance cost. These factors can help identify which failures are causing the highest amount of loss, damage to the overall reliability and having impact on the cost. Similarly, identifying equipment which have unusual number of failures. Some of these things we can do it by ranking, as discussed previously. We can rank equipment based on highest number of EMs and CMs. Then also, or we can do it rank equipment based on highest total maintenance cost. This type of KPIs will allow you to find bad actors. Similarly, we can do most impactful failure causes on reliability. So if we want to identify failure codes which have the highest emergency maintenance or corrective maintenance by failure codes, we can rank it and identify those failure codes. I'm assuming that most of us, when we have a CMEM, we also correctly record failure codes. If not, in some companies we have seen that it's not recorded correctly, then it gives wrong results. And once they find that these results are incorrect, then they make sure that the future data is entered correctly. In some companies, people enter this data into some notes, etc. So now the tools are available that can help identify the failure codes which are written in the notes. So this can help actually identify the failure codes which are causing the most impact. In spare parts, monitoring slow-moving or non-moving items, we can identify percentage of slow-moving items. This will allow you to, identify the inventory levels or the inventory levels which is almost dead or something that you cannot utilize. And based on that, you can then make decisions whether to continue with that inventory or not. Similarly, for budgeting purposes, if we want to use spare parts cost, We can see the percentage total inventory cost change. Also, we can monitor the budgeted versus actual. And if we want to monitor the stockouts, then obviously we should consider percentage work orders waiting for material, percentage from stocks, under stock items, change in procurement lead time. Some of these things can help reduce your spare parts stockout. In resources, if we want, most of us have resources is one of the most expensive element within the total maintenance cost. So obviously we want to reduce overtime hours, so we can monitor this. Labor cost from budgeting purposes, similar to spare parts, we can look at the percentage total labor cost change as well as budgeted versus actual. We also want to see how much hours are logged within CMMS versus actual hours in time and attendance system. Those things will help identify how many hours are actually logged within CMMS, and then if required, you can ensure that the rest of the hours are also logged or accounted for, which will help address the wrench time or the time that is not billed or not utilized. Labor utilization can be improved. We can reduce wrench time. Again, these are examples that we are talking about. Percentage schedule compliance, hours logged in CMMS, similar to what I had before, and waiting for materials. So some of this wrench time could be just poor planning, poor scheduling, or just not enough work. So in general, we all have goals. We all want to reduce the total cost of asset ownership, increase availability. So these are some of the goals. Some of you will have different goals depending on where you are in your cycle. But mostly you will have some goals in for a quarter, for a year, or for a 3-year period. And you may have adopted some strategy around how you want to go about managing all these assets and maintenance and reliability. So you may be using RCM, TPM, or Six Sigma, ISO, whatever may be, or combination thereof. Some of you might have your own methodology. So in general, we all are managing these subject matters like asset life cycle, work management, planning, scheduling, resource management, failure, reliability, costing, spare parts management, etc. So most of these subject matters are handled by CMMS system. Also, there is other data sources which are related to EAM or asset-related data. Sometimes we store inspection data within CMMS, and sometimes it may be outside CMMS. Similarly, there could be engineering, there could be automation, vibration, etc. So what we all can do is bring all this data together, whether it's logically or whether you want to create some sort of data repository. But once you ensure data quality and integrity and bring it all together, it can help you build the KPIs and related information and analysis. You can create different types of metrics. Based on the metrics, you can create alerts, scorecards, dashboards, all of that. And then, of course, you can link these KPIs to the detailed reports as well. So what we see is, once you do that, it is much easier for you to monitor the performance, and you will, of course, revise your goals, refine your strategy, and this cycle continues. So this is what we see as most of the companies follow. So how do we go about building KPI framework? I just earlier listed some of the examples, but really we have to use and set and communicate clear targets that are linked to the overall corporate objectives and production goals, if you all are in the manufacturing side of things, or it could be some other goals. But we really have to have a clarity in our targets. The KPIs needs to be comprehensive, consistent, and easy to understand. If it is too complex, or if it is not taking into account all business scenario, it may not be that useful. Generally, we have seen that about 5 to 6 KPIs per functional area at any given point in time can be very helpful to focus on. Of course, they all have to be linked to leading indicators. We have to engage the workforce and make them understand the impact on their day-to-day activities, how it affects the KPIs. If our goal is to achieve some of these targets, then we have to do all our activities towards those goals. So everything that we do, all our actions, all our decisions are around that. So it's very important to focus, and to how to get everybody engaged in this process is very, very important. These KPIs, once you prioritize them, then everybody is bought into following them or taking all the actions related to that. Most of the KPIs will also identify deficiencies. If you're focused on something, then if you're not able to improve those KPI numbers, people will introspect, people will try to find reasons why they are not able to improve. Also, we have seen KPIs can help applaud the improvements that are made. This will be one of the best ways of ensuring that the end users, if they have done their part and if they have done everything possible to achieve these goals, this will become a very, very easy way to give them credit for. And some of the KPIs can also, like processes and like systems, some of the KPIs can also focus on doing a little bit of indirect micromanagement. And here what we are saying is, like processes, we ensure that people follow certain procedures, certain steps. Similarly, if we want them to follow certain style or certain precautions they have to take, or certain methods that they have to use, we can ensure that some of these KPIs are designed in such a way that those will ensure all the end users will follow a certain type of behavior. So some of these things, also some of the KPIs can be created in such a way that it catches anything that falls through the crack. So anything that we believe we cannot straight identify can also be designed in such a way that it becomes a catch-all net for us to identify anything that we didn't miss. So KPIs, when we design, we have to take into account many things. Some of these are some of these KPIs, when we design, they may be interlinked, and some might be independent. Some might be leading indicators, some might be lagging indicators, some are independent and interdependent. So we just have to study how those KPIs can be structured. Hey Bill, I have one more question.
All right, let's launch our fourth and final poll question. How will you rate your organization's ability to generate KPIs using CMMS data? How will you rate your organization's ability to generate KPIs using CMMS data? Very good, good, poor, or very poor? All right, we're going to close this one out, and Sunil, here comes the results. 56% are saying good, 31% are saying poor, and we have a tie at the bottom, 6% saying very good, 6% saying very poor.
Good. So majority people are feeling good about what they have. So that's a good sign because as discussed earlier, many things. There are two issues here that we were trying to identify. One is, of course, the data quality we talked about, but sometimes the CMMS itself is not collecting enough data or enough scenarios that can help identify some of these things. Based on what we have seen in some companies, have started, adding one more step within their in work order life cycle. Once the work order is completed, before it is closed out, some companies have started doing quality check on the work orders which are done on critical equipments. The idea is to ensure that we are collecting the right type of information and we are collecting or we are entering right data. So whether it's related to failure codes, related to material used, hours spent, etc. So eventually some of this data can be used. So I think it's good to know that most of you feel good about the CMMS that you have and the data that you collect. So obviously this will help you build that. So let's look at some basic philosophies of building the hierarchy or how this is. So we all may have heard about, or some of you may have been using strategy maps. If you have a particular strategy that you want to implement, you may have built it. So I'm going to touch on some of these examples here. The goals, let's take an example here is maintain high reliability. So you may have a KPI called % reliability. And then you might have, and again, there may be multiple factors, but just to build a case here, okay, so we are going to say that the reliability will depend on two factors here. Minimize repair time, so you want to minimize MTTR, as well as you want to eliminate failure or minimize number of failures. So we are going to monitor MTBF. So these two KPIs become kind of intermediate goals. If we track those two, hopefully that will help achieve the business objectives. So as everybody knows, what we can control is what we can manage. So in this case, let's look at what actions we can take to minimize, let's say, MTTR, and what actions we can take to minimize MTBF. So again, this is just an example, but in real life, you may have to build it based on your own scenario. So the actions that you can take is, okay, improve labor skills, improve labor availability. So these two actions you can take that will in turn help you in MTTR. So this is the logic by which most of the strategy maps are built. And so from an monitoring perspective, what we can do is we can monitor all our actions. In this case, how many training hours are have we allocated, and our laborers are spending. And similarly, we can do how much is let's take minimizing MTBF. We can improve our PM and PDM program. So you want to monitor % on-time PM. I could have added another one for PDM as well. So the point here is you can build these type of hierarchy. This was just a 3-level hierarchy, but you can have multi-level hierarchy. Some of it will all depend on what we are trying to address. But by and large, this is the concept that can help when you build the KPIs or list of KPIs that are important to your organization or your situation. So just to give you an example, continue within the same example. So at the top level, you want to increase increase the reliability. So what we can do is, again, just those two KPIs, we can have certain type of indicators that can help the KPIs to monitor, and then you can monitor it on a monthly basis, quarterly, between the plants, between different departments, however you want to. You can benchmark this with others within the organizations if you are a multi-site or multi-location type of organization. So some of these things, as you can see, the rate of failure has reduced in some cases. MTBF has reduced. That means failures is much higher. MTTR is also has reduced. So probably the training is doing, training initiative has helped. But overall, the availability has reduced. So some of these type of KPIs and trending of these KPIs can help you identify the bottlenecks or identify the problems. Another example will be minimize repair time. Just to build the same story, if I want to minimize repair time, I can improve labor availability, labor skills. So I can actually add these KPIs and monitor them. So some of these things can be done in Crystal, can be done in BERT, Actuate, or any other tool that you might have. So another example is, let's take minimize unplanned work. So the intermediate goal could be, look at the planning efficiency, increasing proactive work orders. So some are leading indicators and some are lagging indicators. So in this example, the minimize unplanned work can be a lagging indicator. So the leading indicators can be percentage on-time PM, percentage inspections, etc. So basically, you are trying to figure out how much work is done proactively. And if that is the case, then hopefully your unplanned work will be reduced, or emergency work orders will reduce. Another example is if we are doing EHS compliance. Again, this is another example where you want to reduce incidents related to environment, safety, and health. And this is, I just showed as a one level, but in reality it could be multi-level, and multiple indicators might affect your overall EHS compliance. Once you do all, once you build this type of hierarchy, all these 6, 8, 10, whatever number of KPIs that you might have, you can actually put it into a dashboard and then monitor. So this will help identify problems upfront and help you in looking at the issues around why you're not able to achieve certain goals. So the whole idea is about visibility, and visibility will give you attention, or will make you give attention to the problems, and then hopefully you can make decisions and address some of these problems. Another example, if we are doing PM compliance, so you want to see how much compliance is, how many were scheduled and how many were completed to schedule. So this will give you PM compliance as far as schedule compliance is concerned, but you can also monitor how much is backlogs and etc. So there could be some related KPIs that can also be monitored. So you will always have leading indicators, then there will be some lagging indicators, and then there will be some related KPIs that are indirectly or directly affecting a particular business goal. So you just have to do your homework on identifying various areas and then decide what will have the highest impact. And just as a note, it may not be, you can technically build hundreds of metrics, but not all of them are going to be key performance indicators. So you have to figure it out in your environment, what is the most important thing for whatever the business goal or objective that you are uh, trying to monitor. So some of those things, again, this is another example for RCM dashboard. So this has various things in it, but you may have some targets that you may have set, and then you can use various visual tools to help identify. Some of these things were done in Crystal, some of them were done in BERT. So most of these tools are capable of building some of these type of dashboards. And then of course these dashboards can be linked to the actual detailed reports as well. So you can click on any one of these objects and probably go to the detailed report if you have configured it like that. So this is again at a corporate level or at a maintenance dashboard. This can help you kind of giving you all major key indicators at one shot, and then of course you can have click on any one of them, go to another dashboard for a particular subject matter. So so how do we go from how do we go and build maintenance and reliability KPIs? There are many methodologies. One of the things we have noticed is to most of the KPIs should be around whatever your objectives are. We have to understand what the challenges are, what areas of improvement opportunities we have, and based on that, we have to determine broad level business goals and prioritize them. Not everything can be done at one shot. It's always advisable to prioritize some of those goals. Then start with some subject matter and evolve over time. So you can do exercise for one particular subject matter, study all the aspects around that, understand all the factors that are influencing that particular goal, and then list, like in the previous slides I showed the how the hierarchy is built. You can actually start at the top, then list all the intermediate goals, and then come down till where you can perform some actions, because actions is really the link between what we do and what we can expect. So once you reach to that level, then I think that's where you will be able to identify all the KPIs up to that level. And after that, you determine what those KPIs are, understand all the related information requirements, see whether you can actually build these KPIs from the data that you have. In some cases, it may not be easy to build the data. We had a case of where OEE, if somebody wants to monitor OEE, some of the data that is required for OEE wasn't not available. So you have to do assessment whether that type of KPI or that type of analysis, feasibility study have to be done. Once you do that, you understand the limitation of the data, what you can rely on or what you may not be able to generate. So you have to make a judgment call whether you are going to continue to gather data around those type of KPIs or those type of measures, or you're going to skip it. So that decision you have to make. Once the feasibility is done, then you actually integrate the data, refine, standardize whatever is required to ensure that everybody across the organization understands the definition of that KPI and how that is going to measure the performance. And in some cases, you may have to institute a data quality standards so that whatever KPIs whatever the measures that you are going to rely on are giving you the right information. After that, you will obviously IT or somebody will help you build these KPIs. and the dashboards, scorecards, and some cases you may like to link it with the detailed reports as well. So once you develop it, the idea is to build a culture of making data-driven decisions by involving, communicating, training, and empowering the end users. Once everybody is on board, you will automatically build the culture. And then, of course, this cycle continues. You might go to the next subject matter. And as you will improve the type of KPIs that we have seen different organizations as they mature, the level of sophistication in the KPIs also change. Some of them will start with some basics, but as they progress, the level of KPIs and the detail that goes into those KPIs will also change. So it is an evolution, but we all have to start somewhere. So that helps leverage the data that we have gathered in CMMS. So we can open up for some questions, Bill.
Excellent, excellent presentation, Sunil. I just want to let the audience know we are going to open it up for question and answers now. You can text your questions in to Sunil in the upper right-hand corner. Sunil, we have our first question coming in here. It's on leadership, it looks like. How can we get leadership to believe in KPIs?
That's a great question, and most of the organizations struggle with that. And part of the challenge with the leadership is they may not be aware of what is feasible with the data that we gather with the CMMS that can be helpful to the business. Most of the leaders are smart, so it's our responsibility to help the leadership understand what type of data that we are collecting and give them some samples, give them some examples which can really make them understand how these KPIs can be helpful in making day-to-day decisions as well as some strategic decisions. And so most of the time we have seen that the leadership is not on board at times because they just don't know, or they don't really know the nitty-gritty of the CMMS system or the kind of data that is collected within CMMS system. So it's our job to kind of make them aware.
Sunil, are there any KPIs regarding the quality of data that's in the CMMS?
There is no direct, but what we have seen is some companies institute a step within the work order life cycle. So before a work order is closed out, there is a verification of randomly they do for certain work orders. So that KPI can be generated once you institute that step, and if we have to, some of the people have to redo or re-enter some of the work, then we can measure that, how many work orders had to be, how the data was revamped or data was corrected. So that's one. There is another one. Sometimes we have failure codes which are generic, like others, or so we can actually write a KPI, how many times we have selected others, which in turn is basically not a useful information for generating any KPI. So to answer your question, there is no direct KPIs, but obviously from a case-by-case, one can build certain types of KPIs to monitor the data quality itself.
Is there any one KPI that will show a place to start that's relatively easy to start and maintain so we can show the benefit?
Again, depending on the organization, what is the most important thing that I'll give you an example. We had a situation where there was a contractor who was helping maintain facilities. Now, from a contractor perspective, labor utilization was the most important KPI. But from the company perspective, their whole idea was to ensure that on-time work or the schedule compliance was the most important. So to answer your question, so depending on what you are planning to do or what impacts the most for your business, maybe that's a good starting point because that will get visibility, that will get buy-in from most of the people that are involved. So if downtime is the most important thing in some organization, then maybe that's the time, that's something that they can start with. It may be a little difficult, but that will give a good amount of visibility to monitor.
Snail, we have time for one more question. How do you define a planned work order?
Planned work order, in most cases, in most companies, emergency work order is considered as an unplanned work order in most cases. And for highest priority where a planner doesn't get time to actually plan any that particular work order. So that can become an unplanned work order. In some cases, in some companies, there are these minor work orders that are not at all planned, so they may have a different culture. But in most cases, for this particular KPI, the unplanned would be considered as an emergency work order of highest priority, which is done instantaneously or at the earliest. And the planners don't spend any time on actually planning that particular work order.